Hi, everyone. I'm here with Tom DiNapoli, and he's a New York State Comptroller, and he's also a friend and a patient, if I can say. So
Absolutely.
I appreciate you taking the time to speak to us. And basically, my wife always says, when I'm in the hospital, I know just about everything. I'm very rarely wrong when I'm in the hospital, but as soon as I walk out of St. Francis, she goes, all bets are off. So I'm going to just, have full disclosure right now and show you how little I know about anything outside the hospital. I've seen elections, I've seen campaign ads for state controllers. I have no idea what a controller does. So I'm pleading ignorance. First, I'm sure if I don't know what a controller does, I'm sure many people watching this don't know what it does. So maybe you can help us out and tell us what in the world you do.
Well, it's a fair question. I always say the best job in state government, but the one that people aren't quite sure what we do by the title. But in very summary form, we are very much involved with the operations of state government. We approve contracts, we approve payment, payroll, we manage the state pension fund. So we have 1.1 million New Yorkers, state government and local government employees who depend on their retirement security for the work that we do. We provide accountability, transparency with our audits of local governments, state agencies, public authorities. So anything having to do with accountability, transparency, finances for the state. I don't set the state budget. That's up to the state legislature and the governor, but we're the ones that make sure that the money is spent as intended. That's kind of the real broad stroke of what we do.
And how many people do you have working for you? How many people work for you?
We have about 2,800 people working for us. Most of our operation is based here in Albany. I'm in Albany at the state capitol at the moment. And then we have about 8 regional offices all across the state. New York City, on Long Island, we have a Hauppauge office, and in various regions of upstate New York. With what we're going through now, obviously, most of our employees are working remotely from home. We have a basic crew that's based here in Albany that is carrying on the important functions. But, fortunately, because we're a pretty tech savvy agency and we've always had a pretty liberal policy on telecommuting, we've been able to carry on our functions in spite of the current crisis.
So I'm guessing you have one of the worst jobs in the world right now. Everybody needs money and there's no money where it's coming from. How in the world are you balancing that budget? I mean, it seems impossible.
Yeah, it's very, very tough. We were asked by the governor in the middle of March to come up with a renewed projection on revenue estimates because the state was working to finalize the budget by April 1st. And the state was in pretty good shape, money-wise. Not that there weren't some issues. As you know, the Medicaid program had some cost overruns that had to be dealt with. But still, the sense was that we were going to be able to put the budget together by April 1st in a pretty effective way. Well, then we got hit with the pandemic, and we came up with a revised revenue estimate that said that at best, our shortfall would be some $4 billion going into the next fiscal year, more likely $7 billion plus of a shortfall. And then the governor and legislature had to, under very difficult circumstances, come up with a budget. It was a couple of days late, but basically on time for April 1st. And now we're projecting a $10 billion budget gap. So the budget that's put together anticipates some federal money to help us close the gap, but also provides the governor as the executive with unprecedented flexibility to adjust payments within the year. What that means, Doctor, is that if in fact we don't get adequate federal money or the shortfall because tax revenue will be off because of the lack of business activity and the delay in people having to pay their taxes now until July, the next few months particularly are going to be a tough cash flow time for us. The executive can adjust payments downwards. So that could affect hospital payments, could affect school district, state aid to school districts. So, right now, as the governor said, as he's been saying, basically we're broke. The cupboard is bare. And that's absolutely true, especially in the short run. It's really why we are all hoping that in the next round of stimulus that will come out of Washington, there will be direct aid to help not only New York, but other states that are having these big budget gaps. Because if we can't fill those gaps, the effect of that, the cuts will just trickle down, particularly on healthcare and on education. Certainly, as you know, you're on the front line. It's not a time where healthcare can afford cuts.
No, I mean, I know in our own hospital system, we're, I think the only designated cardiac center in New York. And we, the hospital makes money when we do angioplasty, open heart, electrophysiology, things like that. You don't make money on a COVID patient. Right now, 85% of our hospital is COVID. So the
Wow.
hospital is taking a terrible financial beating as well. And that's why something like this is so important to me, to help all the hospitals, not just our hospital, every hospital. And every hospital on Long Island and New York and around the United States are working hard to take care of every American. And I sort of look like this is sort of like World War II almost, where we're all going to battle and everyone should be pitching in together as one team.
Well, thank God you're doing it, and you and your colleagues in healthcare, the doctors, the nurses, the folks who clean the rooms and the wards. I mean, you are putting yourselves at risk and exposure. And I know there have been many issues out there at the beginning of the pandemic in terms of access to protective, personal equipment, gowns and masks, and for the patients, for ventilators. From what we're hearing, there's been great improvement in that area, but it's very clear that this is not over. It's going to be with us for a long period of time. So making sure that your patients are being taken care of and the public, but also making sure our doctors and healthcare workers, our nurses, everyone on the front lines, that you can do your important work in safety so you're not exposing yourselves and your families. And we've read in the papers of too many incidents of, particularly in the city, but obviously Long Island is not immune from this, of people on the front lines of the healthcare industry being exposed, getting sick, and God forbid, in the worst cases, dying. We don't want to see any more of that happening if we can avoid it.
Absolutely. And, things are getting better, but the reality of it is, and we have to look at the reality. A month ago, we had no COVID patients in our hospital. Within 2 weeks, we were 85%. I don't care who you are. Nobody could have predicted what we would need. Why would we have thousands and millions of masks and gloves? I mean, no one could have predicted this. So considering that we're getting on board within in a 30-day period, I think the administration, New York State administration, the federal administration, hospitals, I think everybody's doing a remarkable job and getting it done. So I really thank you for coming on. And I really thank you for telling me what a controller does, because now I don't look so dumb when I walk out of the hospital.
No, it's a common question. I'm just happy as a patient of yours that you're in the hospital, you know exactly what you're doing. So that gives me peace of mind. I'll worry about the controller work. You keep doing the great work that you're doing.
But wait a minute, since we're such good friends now and I'm your doctor, does that mean I don't have to pay my state taxes?
Department of Tax and Finance is separate from the controller's office.
Okay.
So even if I wanted to, I couldn't help you there.
I thought I'd give it a shot. Well, I hope you have a great day. Thank you for taking the time. I really
Stay safe and well, and thank you for what you're doing to help all the hospitals in Nassau and Suffolk County. Dr. Shlofmitz, we really appreciate your leadership.
Thank you.